Hello there, curious traveller. Welcome to the Cryptic Library. Today we are reading The Hollow Burrow. Once, in a forest where the trees whispered secrets older than time, there lived a little rabbit named Fennel. Like all the other rabbits, Fennel was swift and clever, darting through the underbrush and hiding from the predators that stalked the woods. But Fennel was curious, more curious than a rabbit should be. One day, as twilight deepened and the sky turned a bruised shade of purple, Fennel wandered too far from the safety of the warren. His paws led him to a clearing where the earth had split open, revealing a dark, gaping tunnel. It was no ordinary burrow. The scent that wafted from it was damp and musty, like old leaves rotting at the bottom of a forgotten cave. There was something wrong about the hole, something that made the fur on Fennel's back bristle. Yet, as always, curiosity tugged at him. Without thinking, Fennel stepped into the tunnel. The air inside was thick and stale, heavy with an ancient silence. The walls were rough, unlike the soft soil of his warren, and the tunnel twisted and turned in ways that made Fennel lose all sense of direction. He pressed on, driven by the oddest feeling that something was pulling him forward, deeper into the earth. It didn't take long for him to realize that he had made a terrible mistake. The further Fennel ventured, the more the tunnel changed. The soft dirt under his paws became cool stone, and strange markings appeared on the walls, spirals and jagged lines that hurt his eyes if he stared at them too long. The air grew colder, as if it came from a place where the sun had never touched. Just when Fennel thought to turn back, he heard it, a sound, faint at first but unmistakable. Scraping, shuffling. It echoed through the tunnel, coming from behind him, from the dark. Fennel froze. His heart raced in his chest, and he turned to flee, but the tunnel stretched longer behind him than it should have. Where he had just come from, there was only more darkness. No matter how fast his legs moved, he could not find the entrance. Panic set in. Fennel raced deeper into the tunnel, his paws pounding against the stone floor. The sound followed him, growing louder, closer. He darted around corners, through tight passages, but the tunnel seemed to twist and shift, as though it were alive and changing to trap him. At last, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. It was a place so large and so deep that Fennel could not see the ceiling or the far walls. In the center of the cavern was something immense and writhing, shrouded in shadow. It was a mass of fur and bone and twitching limbs, a shape that defied sense, a thing that should not have existed. Fennel froze, his eyes wide in terror. The creature's many eyes gleamed in the dim light, staring at him from the depths. And then it moved. The sound that came from it was not a growl, not a hiss, but something far worse. A wet, slithering noise, like the scraping of stones deep underground, as though the earth itself was stirring from an ancient slumber. The mass of limbs twisted, and a voice, or what passed for a voice, slithered into Fennel's mind.
"Why do you flee, little one?"
Fennel could not speak, could not move. He wanted to turn and run, but his legs refused to obey him. The thing in the cavern shifted, dragging itself closer, its many limbs unfolding like a grotesque flower opening its petals. He could see its eyes more clearly now, thousands of them, each one wide, unblinking, and full of ancient hunger.
"I have been waiting for you for so long."
The voice wrapped around Fennel like a creeping vine, cold and suffocating. The symbols on the tunnel walls flashed in his mind, their meaning suddenly clear. This was not a burrow. This was a place of worship, an altar to something far older and more terrible than anything that lived on the surface. The thing before him was no simple predator. It was a creature of the deep earth, a god of the hollow places, and Fennel had wandered into its domain. It was hungry. With a desperate cry, Fennel turned and bolted, his heart pounding in his chest. Behind him, the creature's limbs scraped across the stone floor, faster now, eager to claim its prize. The tunnels shifted around him, twisting and narrowing, but Fennel ran blindly, his mind consumed by terror. He didn't know how long he ran. Time had lost all meaning in the labyrinth of stone and shadow. All he knew was that the thing was always behind him, its presence a constant suffocating weight. His muscles burned, his paws bled, but he could not stop. If he stopped, he would never escape. Finally, Just when his legs could carry him no further, Fennel saw it, a faint light at the end of the tunnel. Hope surged through him, and with the last of his strength, he sprinted toward the light. The tunnel opened into the forest once more. Fennel burst out into the cool night air, his lungs burning, his fur matted with sweat. He didn't stop running until he reached the safety of the trees, his heart still hammering in his chest. But something was wrong. The forest felt different now, darker, quieter. The trees, once familiar and comforting, seemed taller, their branches twisted and gnarled like the claws of some ancient beast. The wind no longer whispered, it moaned, low and mournful, as though mourning the little rabbit's escape. Fennel looked back toward the tunnel. The entrance had disappeared, as though it had never been there, but he could still feel it, that presence lurking just beneath the surface, waiting. The symbols burned in his mind, and he knew the truth. He had not escaped, not really. He could still hear the sound of scraping, growing louder with each passing night, echoing through his dreams. And one day, it would come for him again. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like and make sure to subscribe to the Cryptic Library so you do not miss our next story.